The hot studio lights bore down on Marcus Chen as he adjusted his tie, waiting for the cameras to start rolling again after the commercial break. Across from him, veteran TV host Richard Sterling shuffled his notes with the casual arrogance of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The set of Money Matters gleamed with polished chrome and glass, the Manhattan skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows behind them. Sterling didn't bother looking up as makeup touched up his foundation. "So you're the guy who thinks he can revolutionize the tech industry?" His voice carried that particular brand of condescension reserved for people he considered beneath him. "Another startup founder with big dreams and empty pockets, I assume." Marcus remained silent, his hands folded calmly in his lap. The red light blinked on. "Welcome back to Money Matters," Sterling announced, his television smile snapping into place. "I'm here with Marcus Chen, founder of something called Neural Bridge Technologies." He emphasized the word something just enough to make it sound insignificant. "Now, Marcus, you claim your company is developing, quote, revolutionary AI-assisted medical diagnostics. Pretty bold claims for someone who's been in business for what, 6 months? 18 months, Marcus corrected, his voice steady. Sterling waved a dismissive hand. Right. And in that vast amount of time, you've managed to secure how much funding? Let me guess. Still bootstrapping from your parents' garage? A slight smile played at the corner of Marcus's mouth, but he didn't take the bait. "We've been selective about our investors." "Selective?" Sterling repeated, chuckling. "That's what they all say when they can't get meetings. Look, I've seen hundreds of entrepreneurs come through here, all with the next big thing, but let's be honest, the tech industry isn't exactly welcoming to people like, well, to newcomers." The pause was deliberate, the implication clear. Marcus shifted slightly in his chair. "People like what, exactly?" Sterling's eyes flickered with something, surprise maybe, that his guest was pushing back. "You know what I mean. People without connections, without the right background. The Valley is a tough place to break in." "Ah," Marcus nodded slowly. "People without the right appearance?" The host's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm talking about experience, credentials. You can't just waltz into Silicon Valley and expect—" "I have a PhD in computational neuroscience from MIT," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "I spent 5 years at Google's DeepMind division before founding Neural Bridge. Would you like me to continue with my credentials, or should we talk about the actual technology?" Sterling's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He glanced at his notes, clearly looking for something that wasn't there. "Well, credentials are one thing, but execution is another. Your company claims to use AI for medical diagnostics. Frankly, it sounds like vaporware. All hype, no substance." "We've completed successful trials with 3 major hospital systems," Marcus replied. "Our AI can identify early-stage pancreatic cancer with 94% accuracy from standard CT scans. Current methods catch it less than 20% of the time at the same stage." Claims, Sterling scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Anyone can throw numbers around. Where's the proof? Where are the peer-reviewed studies? Where's the FDA approval?" Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Would you like to see the preliminary FDA report? Or perhaps the letter of intent from Cleveland Clinic for a $50 million partnership?" Sterling's eyes narrowed. "You can't seriously expect our viewers to believe—" "I expect them to verify," Marcus cut in. "Everything I'm telling you is public record as of this morning. We announced our Series B funding round at 9 a.m. "Series B?" Sterling's voice cracked slightly. "How much?" $180 million, led by Sequoia Capital, with participation from A16Ds and several strategic healthcare investors. The host's face went through several rapid transformations: disbelief, confusion, and finally the dawning realization that he might have severely underestimated his guest. He frantically flipped through his notes, searching for something his research team had clearly missed. That's impossible. A company your size without any major press suddenly raises. We've been in stealth mode, Marcus explained, his tone patient, almost gentle. Building the technology, running trials, securing partnerships. We chose to stay quiet until we had results worth sharing. Sterling's carefully maintained composure was crumbling. But why come on my show? Why not TechCrunch, Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal? Marcus leaned forward slightly. Because I wanted to address something important. You see, Richard, throughout this interview, you've made several assumptions about me and my company. Assumptions based not on facts, but on, let's call them preconceptions. The host's face flushed. I don't know what you're implying. You assumed I was inexperienced because I'm young. You assumed I lacked funding because you hadn't heard of me. You assumed I didn't belong in Silicon Valley because I don't fit your mental image of a successful tech founder. Marcus's voice remained calm, but each word landed with precision. And those assumptions led you to dismiss technology that could save hundreds of thousands of lives. The studio fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Sterling opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. That's not what It's exactly what you meant, Marcus continued. And it's what happens every day to founders who look like me, who get questioned not about their ideas or execution, but about their right to even be in the room. The camera operators exchanged glances. The production assistant in the corner had stopped scrolling through her phone. Even the makeup artist, usually busy during breaks in conversation, stood frozen with her brush in midair. Sterling cleared his throat, his face now matching the red recording light. I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Marcus said, but there is an opportunity to talk about how bias in the investment community isn't just wrong, it's expensive. It costs lives. Because while we're questioning whether someone belongs, they're building solutions to problems we haven't even recognized yet. The host shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his trademark confidence evaporating. Perhaps we should take another commercial break. No need, Marcus said, checking his watch. I have a board meeting in an hour, but before I go, I want your viewers to know something. He turned to face the camera directly. If you're out there building something meaningful, and people keep telling you that you don't belong, that you're not the right type, keep building. The technology doesn't care what you look like. The problems you're solving don't care about your background, and eventually the results speak louder than anyone's preconceptions. He stood up, smoothing his jacket. Sterling remained seated, looking like a man who just watched his career flash before his eyes. Thank you for having me on, Richard, Marcus said, extending his hand. I hope our next conversation will focus more on the technology and less on appearances. Sterling shook the offered hand mechanically, his palms sweaty. Of course. Perhaps you'd come back when your FDA approval comes through? I'll have my team reach out, Marcus replied, though both men knew this would be their last interaction. As Marcus walked off set, the studio erupted in whispers. Producers huddled around monitors, reviewing the footage. Sterling remained in his chair, staring at his notes as if they might explain how he'd so thoroughly misread his guest. The segment that was supposed to be a lightweight filler piece about another overconfident startup founder had turned into something else entirely. Within minutes of airing, clips were already circulating on social media. Tech founder school's biased TV host began trending. Financial news sites scrambled to cover the Neural Bridge funding announcement they'd somehow missed. But Marcus didn't see any of that. He was already in the elevator, heading down to the lobby, thinking about his next meeting. The 18 months of grinding in obscurity, the countless rejections from investors who couldn't see past his age or appearance, the sleepless nights perfecting the algorithm. It had all led to this moment. Not the TV appearance itself, but the technology behind it. The lives it would save. His phone buzzed with messages from his team, from investors, from reporters suddenly interested in the story they'd ignored for over a year. He silenced it with a tap. There would be time for all of that later. As he stepped out onto the Manhattan street, the city's energy washed over him. Tourists rushed past, taxis honked, street vendors called out their wares. No one recognized him, and that was fine. The work was what mattered. The rest was just noise. Behind him, through the building's glass facade, he could see the Money Matters studio, where Sterling was presumably trying to salvage what remained of the show. Marcus didn't feel vindicated or triumphant. If anything, he felt tired. Tired of having to prove himself over and over. Tired of fighting battles that had nothing to do with the actual work. But that was the reality for founders who looked like him. Every meeting was a test. Every presentation had to overcome invisible barriers before it could even be heard. The technology might be colorblind, but the industry wasn't. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his CTO, Sarah Kim. He answered. "Did you see the Cleveland Clinic numbers?" she asked without preamble. "Not yet. Good news?" "Better than good. They want to expand the trial to all their facilities. And Marcus?" Her voice softened. "I saw the interview. About time someone said it." He smiled despite himself. "Just tired of the same old song and dance." "Well, you certainly changed the tune. The clip's already got 500,000 views." "Great. Maybe now we can focus on the actual work." "That's the hope. See you at the board meeting?" "On my way." He ended the call and hailed a taxi. As the car pulled away from the curb, he allowed himself one glance back at the building. Through the tinted windows, it looked like any other Manhattan skyscraper. But inside, something had shifted. A conversation had started that couldn't be stopped. The taxi merged into traffic, carrying him toward the next challenge, the next mountain to climb. But for the first time in months, the path ahead seemed a little clearer. Not easier, but clearer. Because sometimes the most powerful disruption isn't technological. Sometimes it's simply telling the truth in a room where everyone's grown comfortable with polite fictions. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. The board meeting was already in full swing when Marcus arrived at Neural Bridge's headquarters in Lower Manhattan. The office occupied the entire 23rd floor of a renovated Art Deco building, its windows offering sweeping views of the Hudson River. Unlike the flashy Silicon Valley campuses he'd grown tired of during his Google days, Marcus had chosen a space that reflected his company's ethos, elegant, functional, and devoid of unnecessary pretense. Sarah Kim looked up from her presentation as he entered the conference room. "Perfect timing. I was just going over the Cleveland Clinic expansion metrics." The board members, a mix of venture capitalists, healthcare executives, and technical advisors, turned to acknowledge him. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table, noticing the barely concealed smirks on some faces. They'd all seen the interview. "Before we continue," said David Walsh, the Sequoia partner who'd led their Series B, "I have to ask, was that planned?" Marcus poured himself a glass of water, taking his time. "The interview was planned. Richard Sterling's assumptions were not. You certainly made an impression," added Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, their healthcare advisor and former Mayo Clinic chief of oncology. "My phone's been buzzing nonstop. Apparently, calling out systemic bias on national television gets people's attention." "That wasn't the goal," Marcus replied. "I went on to announce our funding round and discuss the technology. Sterling made it about something else." "But you didn't back down," Walsh observed. "You could have deflected, played nice, kept it professional." I did keep it professional. Professional doesn't mean accepting disrespect. The room fell quiet for a moment. It was James Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, who broke the silence. As Neural Bridge's first investor and a veteran of 3 successful exits, he commanded respect even in rooms full of egos. "Let's be honest," James said, leaning forward. "We all know why Marcus had to handle it that way. I've been in this industry for 30 years. When I started, I was the only Asian face in most rooms. They questioned everything, my English, my education, whether I could really understand American business culture." He paused, making eye contact with each board member. Marcus just did what many of us wish we'd had the courage to do back then. Sarah cleared her throat. "Should we return to the Cleveland Clinic data?" "Please," Marcus said, grateful for the redirect. The next hour was spent reviewing trial results, expansion plans, and regulatory timelines. The numbers were exceptional. Their AI had not only maintained its 94% accuracy rate in detecting early-stage pancreatic cancer, but had also shown promising results with liver and colorectal cancers. More importantly, the false positive rate was under 2%, far better than existing screening methods. "The radiologists are calling it transformative," Sarah reported. "Dr. Patterson at Cleveland said it's like having a consultant who never gets tired, never misses subtle patterns, and gets smarter with every scan." "What about the FDA timeline?" asked Walsh. "Accelerated review pathway," Marcus answered. "Based on our breakthrough designation, we're looking at 12-18 months instead of the usual 3 to 5 years. The agency recognizes the potential impact on mortality rates." The meeting continued, covering financial projections, hiring plans, and potential acquisition interest from larger medical device companies. Throughout it all, Marcus noticed the subtle shift in how the board members addressed him. There was a new undertone of respect, as if the morning's confrontation had somehow validated what his technical achievements alone couldn't. As the meeting wound down, Dr. Reyes lingered behind. "You know," she said, gathering her papers, "I almost didn't join this board." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" "Another AI health startup. I get pitched 5 a week. But James insisted I meet you." She smiled. "He said you had something different, not just the technology, but the perspective. Today I understood what he meant." After she left, Marcus found himself alone in the conference room staring out at the river. His phone, which he'd kept on silent, showed 47 missed calls and over 200 text messages. The media storm he'd inadvertently created was gathering force. Sarah poked her head back in. "You might want to see this." She pulled up Twitter on the conference room's display. The Money Matters clip had been viewed over 3 million times. The comments ranged from supportive to vitriolic, but one thread caught his attention. It was from a young black woman in medical school. Watching Marcus Chentek stand up to that condescending host while talking about saving lives with AI, "This is why representation matters. I'm switching my residency focus to computational medicine. If he can break those barriers, so can we." Marcus stared at the tweet, something tightening in his chest. He'd been so focused on the technology, on proving the skeptics wrong through results, that he'd forgotten the other part of the equation, the human part. "You okay?" Sarah asked. "Yeah, just processing." She nodded. "For what it's worth, you did the right thing. That host was way out of line." "Was he, though?" Marcus turned to face her. "Or was he just saying what everyone thinks but doesn't vocalize? How many pitch meetings have we done where the VCs spent more time asking about my background than our technology?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Too many. Remember that Sand Hill Road firm that asked if you had a real American co-founder to be the face of the company? Or the healthcare conference where they assumed I was the IT support? Or—" Sarah stopped herself. "Sorry, not helping. No, it's It's fine, it's reality. Marcus walked to the whiteboard where they'd mapped out their product roadmap. You know what's funny? Sterling actually did us a favor. He stripped away all the polite pretenses and showed what we're really up against. The office had filled up as the day progressed. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see his team of 35 engineers, data scientists, and medical experts hard at work. It was a deliberately diverse group, not for optics, but because he knew firsthand how different perspectives led to better solutions. His head of clinical trials, Dr. Hamara Okafor, knocked on the door. "Marcus, there's someone here to see you, says he's from the Times." "Which Times?" "New York. David Bradley. He covered our Series A but couldn't get an interview then." Marcus almost laughed. 18 months ago, they couldn't get press coverage if they'd paid for it. Now, after one unplanned moment of confrontation, everyone wanted the story. "Send him in." David Bradley was younger than Marcus expected, probably early 30s, with the eager energy of someone chasing their first big scoop. He shook Marcus's hand firmly. "Thanks for seeing me. I know it's been a crazy day." "That's one way to put it." Bradley pulled out a recorder. "Mind if I—" "Go ahead." "First, let me say, that was incredible television. Sterling's been coasting on his reputation for years, talking down to guests, especially founders of color. You called him out perfectly." "I didn't go there to call anyone out," Marcus said carefully. "I went to talk about our technology. But you did more than that. You exposed a pattern that everyone in tech knows exists, but few address directly. The soft bigotry of low expectations. The assumption that certain people don't belong in certain spaces." Marcus studied the journalist. "You seem to have strong feelings about this." Bradley's professional mask slipped slightly. "My sister's a software engineer. Brilliant. MIT grad, holds several patents. She still gets asked to take notes in meetings because they assume she's an assistant." "Ah. So when I saw you refuse to play along with Sterling's condescension..." Bradley leaned forward. "It mattered. To a lot of people." The interview lasted an hour. Bradley was thorough, asking not just about the morning's incident, but about Neural Bridge's journey, the technology, and Marcus's vision for the future of AI in healthcare. Unlike Sterling, he'd done his homework. "One last question," Bradley said as he packed up. "If you could go back and do that interview differently, would you?" Marcus considered this. "No, but I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish we lived in a world where the conversation could have been about the thousands of lives we're going to save, not about whether I deserve to be sitting in that chair." After Bradley left, Marcus called an impromptu all-hands meeting. The team gathered in the main workspace, some sitting on desks, others standing. The energy was different, electric, anticipatory. "By now you've all seen or heard about this morning's interview," Marcus began. "I want to address it directly. What happened today wasn't planned, but it was perhaps inevitable. We've all faced those moments when someone looks at us and sees everything except our capabilities." Heads nodded around the room. His team knew exactly what he meant. "But here's what matters. Our work. The lives we're going to save. The barriers we're breaking aren't just technological, they're human. And every time our AI catches a cancer that would have been missed, we prove that innovation doesn't have a color, a gender, or a background. It just has impact." Dr. Okafor raised her hand. "Marcus, I've been getting calls from other Black physicians and researchers. They want to know if we're hiring, if we're open to collaborations. That interview, it sent a signal." "Then let's answer it," Marcus replied. "Set up a webinar. Let's talk about our work, our culture, and yes, our commitment to building a company that looks like the world we're trying to serve." The meeting broke up with an energy Marcus hadn't seen since their early days. People were talking animatedly, sharing their own stories of overcoming skepticism and bias. It was as if the morning's confrontation had given everyone permission to acknowledge what they'd all experienced but rarely discussed openly. As the sun began to set over Manhattan, Marcus found himself back in his office, finally checking his personal email. Among the hundreds of messages was one that stopped him cold. The sender was Richard Sterling. "Mr. Chen," it read, "I owe you an apology. Not the public one my producers are drafting, but a real one. You were right. I made assumptions based on prejudices I didn't even realize I held. That's not an excuse, just an acknowledgement. I've spent 20 years in this business thinking I was one of the good ones, that I treated everyone fairly. Today showed me I have a lot to learn. If you're willing, I'd like to have you back on the show, not for ratings, but to have the conversation we should have had this morning. To talk about your work, your vision, and yes, the barriers that founders like you face every day. No cameras if you prefer. Just a conversation. Sincerely, Richard Sterling." Marcus read the email twice, then leaned back in his chair. Outside his window, Manhattan was lighting up for the evening, thousands of windows glowing with ambition and dreams. He thought about the young medical student on Twitter, about David Bradley's sister, about his own team energized by a moment of unvarnished truth. The email cursor blinked, waiting for his response. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let Sterling stew in the consequences of his actions. But another part, the part that had spent years building bridges even when others tried to burn them, saw an opportunity. Because changing minds, like developing technology, was an iterative process. You didn't achieve breakthrough results with a single moment of brilliance. You did it through consistent pressure, patient explanation, and the willingness to engage even with those who doubted you. He began to type. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your message. Real change starts with honest conversations. Let's talk." As he hit send, Sarah knocked on his doorframe. News vans outside. CNN, Bloomberg, even the BBC. "What do you want to do?" Marcus stood, straightening his tie. The day that had started with a simple funding announcement had become something much larger. But then again, maybe that was always the nature of change. It arrived not when you planned for it, but when you were finally ready to stop accepting the unacceptable. "Let's go talk to them," he said. "But this time we're setting the terms." Sarah grinned. About time. They walked toward the elevators together, ready to face whatever came next. Because sometimes the most powerful technology isn't the one you build in a lab or code into an algorithm. Sometimes it's the simple act of speaking truth in rooms that have grown too comfortable with silence. And Marcus Chen was just getting started. The media scrum outside Neural Bridge headquarters was larger than Marcus had anticipated. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metallic flowers seeking signal. Reporters jostled for position, microphones extended like weapons. As Marcus and Sarah stepped out of the building, the questions came in a barrage. "Mr. Chen, do you think Richard Sterling should resign? Was this a planned takedown of mainstream media? How does it feel to be the face of minority entrepreneurship?" Marcus held up a hand, waiting for the cacophony to subside. When it did, he spoke with the same measured calm he'd displayed that morning. "I appreciate your interest, but let's be clear about something. Today isn't about me versus Richard Sterling. It's not about viral moments or media feuds. It's about the work we're doing at Neural Bridge to save lives through artificial intelligence." He paused, making eye contact with several reporters. "If you want to discuss our breakthrough in early cancer detection, I'm happy to talk. If you're here for drama, you're at the wrong address." The questions shifted, becoming more substantive. Marcus fielded them expertly, pivoting each answer back to the technology and its potential impact. Sarah jumped in with technical details when needed, her expertise lending weight to their claims. After 20 minutes, they wrapped up the impromptu press conference. As the crowd dispersed, a young black woman in a CBS jacket approached. Mr. Chen, I'm Jasmine Torres, producer for 60 Minutes. We'd like to do a full segment on Neural Bridge. Not just about today, but about your journey and the technology. Would you be interested? Marcus exchanged a glance with Sarah. 60 Minutes was the gold standard of television journalism. Let's talk, he said. Back in the office, the energy was palpable. Engineers who normally communicated through Slack were gathered in small groups discussing the day's events. Marcus noticed something else too, a sense of pride that went beyond their usual satisfaction with technical breakthroughs. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Saw you on TV. About time someone said what needed saying. Your father would be proud." Marcus smiled. His parents had immigrated from Taiwan in the 1980s, his father working 3 jobs to put himself through engineering school while his mother cleaned offices at night. They'd faced their own battles with prejudice and low expectations. His father had passed away 5 years ago, just before Marcus left Google to start Neural Bridge. He'd never gotten to see what his son would build. "Marcus?" It was Dr. Raj Patel, their head of algorithm development. "You need to see this." Raj led him to the analytics dashboard. The traffic to their website had increased 50-fold since the interview aired. More importantly, they'd received over 300 inquiries from hospitals and medical centers interested in their technology. "Look at this distribution," Raj pointed to a heat map of the United States. "We're getting interest from rural hospitals, inner-city medical centers, places that usually get overlooked by medical tech companies." "Schedule calls with all of them," Marcus said. "Prioritize the underserved areas." "All of them? That's going to take..." "Then we expand the team. This is exactly why we built this technology, to democratize access to advanced diagnostics." As the day wore on, the implications of the morning's events continued to ripple outward. Marcus's email inbox filled with messages from fellow entrepreneurs, many sharing their own stories of facing bias in the tech world. A group of Black venture capitalists reached out about forming a consortium to fund minority-led health tech startups. Medical schools inquired about partnerships for training the next generation of computational physicians. Around 7 p.m., as the office began to empty, Marcus's personal phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Marcus Chen. "Mr. Chen, this is Dr. Angela Martinez from the National Institutes of Health. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all, Dr. Martinez. How can I help you?" "I'll be direct. We've been following your work at Neural Bridge for some time. Today's visibility has accelerated some internal discussions. We'd like to explore a partnership. Specifically, we want to fund a large-scale trial of your AI across our network of research hospitals." Marcus sat up straighter. NIH partnerships were career-defining opportunities. "We'd be very interested in discussing that." "Excellent. There's something else. We're launching an initiative to increase diversity in medical AI research. After seeing how you handled yourself today, several of us believe you'd be the perfect person to lead it." "Lead it?" "Chair the advisory board, help set research priorities, ensure that AI development in healthcare includes perspectives from all communities. Too often these technologies are developed by homogeneous teams and tested on limited populations. We need to change that." After the call ended, Marcus sat in his darkened office, processing the day's events. That morning, he'd been a relatively unknown founder preparing for a routine TV appearance. Now he found himself at the center of a national conversation about bias, technology, and the future of healthcare. His computer chimed with a video call request. It was James Chen, his first investor, calling from San Francisco. "Hell of a day, Marcus." "You could say that." James's face was serious. "I've been in this game long enough to know that moments like these are double-edged swords. You've got attention now, but that comes with scrutiny. Every move you make will be watched, analyzed, criticized. I know. Do you? Because what you did today, it wasn't just about you or Neural Bridge. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted to or not. People are going to project their hopes and fears onto you. Marcus nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that, about responsibility. Good, because here's what's going to happen next. Some people will try to tear you down, find any mistake in your past, any flaw in your technology. Others will put you on a pedestal, expect you to be the voice for every marginalized entrepreneur. Neither is healthy. So what do? James smiled. What you've always done. Focus on the work. Let the technology speak for itself. But also, don't shy away from the platform you've earned. Use it wisely. After the call, Marcus walked through the empty office. The whiteboards were covered with equations and flowcharts, the detritus of minds working at the edge of possibility. He stopped at the wall where they'd hung letters from patients who'd participated in their early trials. One caught his eye. Dear Neural Bridge team, your AI found my pancreatic cancer when it was still stage 1. My doctors said if we'd waited even 2 months more, it would have been too late. I'm writing this letter 6 months after my surgery, cancer-free. I'll get to see my daughter graduate from college next spring. Thank you for giving me more time. Robert Sullivan. This was why he did it. Not for the accolades or the funding rounds, but for the Robert Sullivans of the world. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Richard Sterling. Watched your press conference outside your office. You handled it with more grace than I deserved. Offer still stands for that conversation. No cameras, just 2 people trying to understand each other better. Marcus considered the message. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let Sterling live with the consequences of his actions. But he thought about what James had said about using his platform wisely. Real change didn't come from public shamings or viral moments. It came from difficult conversations, from people willing to admit their mistakes and learn from them. He typed back, "Let's meet tomorrow, neutral ground. There's a coffee shop on Houston Street, grounded, 10 a.m. The response was immediate. I'll be there. As Marcus prepared to leave for the night, Sarah appeared in his doorway. Going home? Eventually. Think I'll walk for a bit, clear my head. Hell of a first day for our Series B announcement. He laughed. Not exactly what we planned. No, she agreed. But maybe what we needed. You know what's different about today versus all our other funding announcements? People are talking about the technology. Really talking about it. Not just the valuation or the investors, but what it could mean for healthcare. She was right. In a strange way, the confrontation with Sterling had accomplished what no PR campaign could have. It had made people pay attention to the substance behind the headlines. Sarah, he said as she turned to go, thank you for having my back today, for building this with me. She smiled. That's what co-founders do. Besides, someone had to keep you from becoming a complete media darling. After she left, Marcus took the stairs down to the street. Manhattan at night had always calmed him. The city that never slept somehow made his own restlessness feel normal. He walked without a destination, his mind processing the day's events. His phone continued to buzz with notifications, but he ignored them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight. But tonight, he just wanted to walk and think. As he passed a newsstand, he caught sight of the late edition headlines. Several featured his image from the interview, with headlines ranging from "Tech Founder Schools TV Host on Bias" to "The Interview That Changed Everything." The vendor, an older man with knowing eyes, noticed him looking. "Hey, you're that guy from the TV." Marcus nodded. "Good for you, son. About time someone said what you said. My grandson's studying computer science, wants to start his own company someday. I'm going to show him that clip. Tell him not to let anyone make him feel small." Tell him the work matters more than what people think, Marcus said. I will. Hey, you want a copy? On the house. Marcus accepted the newspaper, tucking it under his arm as he continued walking. The weight of it felt significant somehow, like carrying a piece of history he'd accidentally helped write. He found himself in Washington Square Park, where NYU students were gathered despite the late hour. As he passed, he heard snatches of conversation. Did you see that interview today? My mom sent me like 5 links to it. That's what I want to do, build something that matters and not apologize for it. Marcus kept walking, but something warm bloomed in his chest. Maybe James was right. Maybe being a symbol wasn't just a burden, it was an opportunity. Not to be perfect, but to be visible. To show that success in tech didn't have to look a certain way, come from certain schools, or fit certain molds. His phone rang. It was his mother. Ma, it's late, you should be sleeping. As if I could sleep after today. Are you eating? You sound tired. He smiled. Some things never changed. I'm fine, Ma, just walking. Your father used to walk when he had big things on his mind. The night before he defended his PhD thesis, he walked all night. I remember. Marcus, what you did today. It wasn't just about you. It was about all of us who came here with nothing but dreams and determination, who faced closed doors and closed minds but kept pushing. Ma, I'm not finished. Your father faced discrimination his whole career, people assuming he couldn't innovate, only copy, that his ideas weren't worth funding. He never complained, just worked harder. But sometimes I wonder what he could have achieved if he hadn't had to fight those battles. Marcus stopped walking, standing in the glow of a streetlight. I think about that too. But you, my son, you fought back, not with anger, but with dignity, with facts. Your father would be so proud. After they hung up, Marcus stood there for a long moment. Then he turned and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The meeting with Sterling, the NIH discussions, the growing weight of expectations. But tonight he'd change something, not just minds or perceptions, but possibilities. And that was a good day's work. As he walked, his phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, I'm a 16-year-old black girl in Atlanta who loves coding and biology. I saw your interview. My parents always worried about me going into tech because they said people like us don't make it. Today you proved them wrong. Thank you for showing me what's possible. Marcus stopped and read the message again. Then he saved the number and typed back, what's possible is whatever you make possible. Keep coding, keep dreaming. The future needs your innovations. He hit send and continued toward home, the city lights guiding his way. Tomorrow would come with its challenges and opportunities, but today had reminded him why he started this journey in the first place. To build something that mattered, to open doors that had been closed to too many for too long, and to prove that innovation knows no color, only capability. The newspaper under his arm rustled in the evening breeze, carrying stories of a day that had started like any other but ended as something else entirely. And Marcus Chen walked on, ready for whatever came next. The morning air carried the first hints of autumn as Marcus approached Grounded, the coffee shop on Houston Street. It was intentionally early, 9:45 a.m., giving him time to collect his thoughts before meeting Richard Sterling. The choice of venue had been deliberate, neutral territory, away from cameras and corporate polish, where two people could have an honest conversation. The shop was a converted brownstone, its exposed brick walls lined with local art and mismatched furniture that somehow created perfect harmony. Marcus had discovered it during his early days in New York, when he was still coding in a cramped studio apartment, surviving on venture capital fumes and unlimited optimism. He ordered a black coffee and found a table in the back corner, positioning himself to see the entrance. His phone buzzed continuously, messages from team members, investors, media outlets, and strangers who'd somehow gotten his number. He silenced it, needing these few minutes of clarity. At exactly 10 a.m., Richard Sterling walked in. Gone was the polished TV host from yesterday's broadcast. He wore jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and an expression that mixed anxiety with determination. He spotted Marcus immediately but hesitated at the counter, ordering what looked like an elaborate latte that required multiple clarifications to the barista. Finally, Sterling approached the table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it. "Have a seat." Sterling sat, cradling his latte like a shield. For a moment, neither spoke. The coffee shop's ambient noise, grinding beans, quiet conversations, the hiss of steam, filled the space between them. "I've been in television for 22 years, Sterling finally began. "Started as a production assistant, worked my way up through local news, finally landed the Money Matters gig 8 years ago. I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs, CEOs, innovators." He paused, looking down at his coffee. "I've never had someone expose my biases so completely on my own show." "That wasn't my intention," Marcus said. "I know. That's what makes it worse. You weren't trying to embarrass me, you were just being truthful." Sterling looked up. "After you left, my producer pulled the footage. She wanted to edit it, soften some of the exchanges. I watched it 3 times. Each time I saw something else I'd done wrong. Comments I'd made, assumptions I'd revealed." Marcus sipped his coffee, waiting. "My daughter called me last night," Sterling continued. "She's 24, working at a non-profit in Brooklyn. She was furious, said she'd been trying to tell me for years about my blind spots, about how I talked down to certain guests without realizing it, but I never listened. I thought being successful meant I understood success." "Success can be a barrier to growth," Marcus observed. Sterling nodded. "I kept thinking about something you said, about how bias isn't just wrong, it's expensive. How many innovations have we missed because someone like me decided the innovator didn't fit the mold?" "It's not just about missed opportunities," Marcus said. "It's about lives. Take our AI system. We've been working on it for 18 months, but similar technology could have existed 5 years ago if more diverse teams had been funded, if more perspectives had been included in development." "Tell me about that," Sterling leaned forward. "About how diversity actually improves the technology." Marcus considered his words carefully. "When we started training our AI on medical images, we used data sets from major research hospitals, top-tier facilities with cutting-edge equipment. The AI performed brilliantly on patients who looked like the ones in those data sets. Predominantly white, relatively affluent, with access to regular health care." Sterling was taking notes now, the journalist in him emerging. "But when we tested it on images from community hospitals, rural clinics, facilities serving diverse populations, the accuracy dropped significantly. Different equipment, different patient populations, different disease presentations. Our head of clinical trials, Dr. Okafor, identified the problem immediately. She'd seen it before. Medical AI that works great in Silicon Valley, but fails in South Chicago. So what did you do? We rebuilt our training data from the ground up, partnered with hospitals in underserved communities, clinics in rural areas, medical centers that serve immigrant populations. Our team, which includes doctors from Nigeria, India, El Salvador, and rural Alabama, brought perspectives that made our AI more robust, more accurate across all populations." Sterling's pen stopped moving. I never thought about it that way. Diversity is a technical advantage, not just a social good." "They're inseparable," Marcus said. "When your team looks like the world, you build for the world. When it doesn't, you build for a subset and assume it's universal." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the coffee shop continued its morning rhythm. A young woman at a nearby table was coding on her laptop, headphones on, lost in her work. Marcus wondered if she'd seen yesterday's interview, if it had affected her in any way. "Can I ask you something?" Sterling said. "Off the record, just person to person." Marcus nodded. "How do you do it? Deal with it day after day? The assumptions, the dismissals, the constant need to prove yourself." "You assume it gets easier," Marcus replied. "It doesn't. You just get better at choosing your battles." He paused, considering. "My father used to say that anger was a luxury we couldn't afford, that the work had to speak louder than our frustration. But yesterday you spoke up. Because yesterday, the dismissal wasn't just of me, it was of the technology, of the lives it could save. When you suggested our work was vaporware, you weren't just insulting our company. You were dismissing the potential to detect cancer early in thousands of people who might otherwise die." Sterling winced. "I see that now. I was so focused on the narrative I'd pre-written, another overhyped startup, that I couldn't see what was actually in front of me." "That's the thing about bias," Marcus said. "It's not usually malicious. It's efficient. Our brains create shortcuts, patterns, assumptions that help us navigate the world quickly. But those shortcuts can lead us astray. So how do we fix it? How do I fix it?" Marcus leaned back, considering. "You're asking the wrong question. It's not about fixing it once. It's about constantly checking your assumptions, questioning your shortcuts, being willing to be wrong." Sterling nodded slowly. "My daughter said something similar. She said I needed to stop thinking I was one of the good ones and start doing the work." "Your daughter sounds smart." "She is. Smarter than her old man, apparently." Sterling smiled ruefully. "She's actually why I wanted to meet. She said if I was serious about learning, I needed to listen, not just apologize." Their conversation continued, moving from personal reflection to broader discussions about media representation, technological innovation, and the intersection of both. Marcus found himself unexpectedly impressed by Sterling's willingness to be vulnerable, to admit ignorance, to ask genuine questions. An hour passed, then two. Their coffee cups were long empty, but neither moved to leave. Other patrons came and went, the morning rush giving way to the lunch crowd. "I have a proposal," Sterling said finally. "Not for TV, not for ratings. I want to do a series on innovation and inclusion, not just in tech, but across industries. Real conversations about how bias limits progress and how diversity drives innovation. Would you be willing to advise? Help me avoid the pitfalls I fell into yesterday." Marcus studied him. "Why should I trust that this is genuine?" "You shouldn't," Sterling replied immediately. "Trust is earned, but I'm asking for a chance to earn it." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it. Sarah was calling for the third time. "I should take this," he said. Sterling nodded. "Of course." Marcus stepped outside. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "Wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's incredible. The NIH wants to meet tomorrow. The Cleveland Clinic CEO just called personally, and Marcus. Sequoia wants to lead a Series C. Already? We just closed B yesterday. At a $2 billion valuation. They're talking about making us a unicorn before we even have FDA approval." Marcus felt a familiar mix of excitement and wariness. "That's fast. Too fast? Maybe. Let's talk when I get back. I'm still with Sterling." "How's that going?" Marcus glanced through the window at Sterling, who was staring at his empty coffee cup, looking thoughtful. "Better than expected. I'll fill you in later." Back inside, Sterling looked up as Marcus returned. "Everything okay?" "Just business moving faster than expected." "Because of yesterday?" "Partly. Visibility has its advantages." Sterling nodded. And its costs. I should warn you, there are already people digging into your background looking for ammunition. It's what happens when someone challenges the narrative too effectively. Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something. The question is how it's framed. Sterling hesitated. There's a producer at Fox already working on a hit piece. Something about your time at Google, a project that didn't work out. Marcus felt a flash of anger, then let it pass. The protein folding initiative. We tried to use early transformer models for molecular prediction. It failed, spectacularly, cost the company millions. They're going to use it to question your judgment. Good. Sterling blinked. Good? Failure is data. That project taught us what not to do, which algorithms had limitations, which approaches were dead ends. Without that failure, Neural Bridge wouldn't exist. You could get ahead of it. Control the narrative. Marcus shook his head. I'm not interested in controlling narratives. I'm interested in building technology that works. Let them write their stories. We'll keep saving lives. Sterling studied him for a long moment. You really don't care what people think, do you? I care what my team thinks, what our patients think, what the data thinks. The rest is noise. They wrapped up their conversation with plans to continue the dialogue. Sterling would send Marcus an outline for his proposed series. Marcus would consider the advisory role. Both would take time to process what had been shared. As they stood to leave, Sterling extended his hand again. Thank you. For your time, your honesty, and your grace. I didn't deserve it. Grace isn't about what people deserve, Marcus replied, shaking his hand. It's about what we choose to give. Outside, the autumn sun was climbing higher. The city hummed with its usual energy, indifferent to the small reconciliations happening in coffee shops and boardrooms across its landscape. Marcus's phone buzzed again, a text from Dr. Martinez at NIH. Excited about our call tomorrow. The board is unanimous. We need voices like yours shaping the future of medical AI. As he walked back to the office, Marcus thought about the strange trajectory that had brought him here. From a kid watching his immigrant parents navigate a world that constantly underestimated them, to a programmer at Google learning the limitations of even the most advanced systems, to a founder trying to democratize healthcare through artificial intelligence. Yesterday's confrontation hadn't been planned, but perhaps it had been inevitable. Every meeting where investors questioned his cultural fit, every conference where he was mistaken for support staff, every pitch where his ideas were dismissed until a white colleague repeated them. It had all been building to that moment in Sterling's studio. But what mattered now wasn't the viral clip or the sudden attention. What mattered was what came next. The work continued, the technology advanced. Lives would be saved or lost based on their ability to execute, not their ability to generate headlines. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Ma, I'm walking to the office. Can I call you back?" "Just quickly, your Auntie Lynn called. Her hospital in Flushing wants to trial your system. She's been bragging about her nephew, the CEO." Marcus smiled. "Tell her to have their administrator call Sarah." "And Marcus, your father's old colleague from Bell Labs reached out. Says he always knew you'd do something special." "Thanks, Ma." After hanging up, Marcus quickened his pace. The office would be buzzing with energy, plans to be made, code to be written, lives to be impacted. Yesterday's moment of truth had opened doors, but walking through them required the same dedication that had brought them this far. As he turned onto his block, he saw news vans still parked outside the building. But now, he also saw something else. A group of young people, diverse in every way, gathered near the entrance. One held a sign, "Building the future we want to see." They recognized him as he approached, their faces lighting up. Questions came rapid fire, about the technology, about breaking into tech, about overcoming obstacles. Marcus stopped, giving them the time he wished someone had given him at their age. Because this, too, was part of the work. Not just building the technology, but building the pipeline. Not just opening doors, but making sure others could walk through them. The future wasn't just about artificial intelligence, it was about human intelligence, finally unleashed from the constraints of narrow thinking and limited imagination. And that future was being built, one conversation, one innovation, one truth-telling moment at a time. The NIH headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland, represented everything Marcus had once dreamed of, the pinnacle of medical research where breakthrough science met public policy. As his car pulled up to the sprawling campus, he straightened his tie and checked his reflection in the window. Sarah sat beside him, reviewing their presentation one final time. "Remember," she said, "they're not just interested in the technology. After yesterday, they want you to lead their diversity initiative." "I'm not sure I'm the right person for that." "Because you'd rather be coding?" "Because I've spent my whole career trying not to be pigeonholed as the diverse founder. I wanted the work to speak for itself." Sarah closed her laptop. "Maybe that's exactly why you're the right person. You understand both sides, the need for representation and the desire to be seen for your work, not your demographics." They were met in the lobby by Dr. Angela Martinez, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and an air of quiet authority. Her handshake was firm, her smile warm, but assessing. "Mr. Chen, Ms. Kim, welcome. The board is eager to meet you. Fair warning, your interview yesterday has created quite a stir here." "Good stir or bad stir?" Sarah asked. "Necessary stir," Dr. Martinez replied, leading them through security. "We've been talking about diversity in medical AI for years. Your confrontation with Sterling crystallized why it matters in a way our policy papers never could." The conference room was intimidating. Wood-paneled walls lined with portraits of former NIH directors, a massive table that could seat 30, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the campus. 8 people were already seated, representing different institutes within NIH. Dr. Martinez made introductions, researchers, administrators, and notably Dr. James Thompson, the first black director of the National Cancer Institute. His presence felt significant, though Marcus tried not to read too much into it. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Thompson began after pleasantries were exchanged, "let's start with the obvious. Your technology shows remarkable promise for early cancer detection, but yesterday you made a compelling case that goes beyond the science. You argued that biased development leads to biased outcomes. Can you elaborate?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "Certainly. Medical AI systems are only as good as their training data. If that data comes primarily from affluent urban hospitals serving predominantly white populations, the AI learns to recognize patterns specific to those groups. It might miss how diseases present differently in other populations." He pulled up a slide on his laptop. "Here's an example from our early development. Skin cancer detection AI trained on light skin tones missed 40% of melanomas on darker skin, not because the technology was flawed, but because the training data was incomplete." "And your solution?" another board member asked. "Intentional inclusion from day one. Our training data sets include images from rural clinics, inner-city hospitals, tribal health services, immigrant community centers. Our development team includes clinicians who've worked in these diverse settings. The result is AI that performs consistently across all populations." The technical discussion continued for an hour, diving deep into methodology, validation protocols, and scalability. Marcus and Sarah fielded questions with practiced ease, their complementary expertise, his in AI architecture, hers in implementation, creating a compelling narrative. Then Dr. Thompson shifted the conversation. "Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yesterday's interview has made you something of a symbol. How do you feel about that?" Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Honestly, conflicted. I've spent my career trying to be seen as a technologist first. Now I'm being asked to be a spokesperson for diversity. It feels like a different kind of box. But isn't it a necessary box? Dr. Martinez interjected. Someone needs to bridge the gap between technical excellence and inclusive development. With respect, Marcus replied, I think that framing is part of the problem. We talk about diversity as if it's separate from excellence, something we add on for social good. But in medical AI, diversity isn't charity, it's accuracy. It's not about being nice, it's about being right. The room fell silent. Dr. Thompson leaned forward. Go on. When we exclude perspectives, we don't just harm those excluded groups. We harm science itself. We build systems that work for some people some of the time and call them universal solutions. That's not just unfair, it's bad engineering. Sarah jumped in. What Marcus is saying is that diversity isn't a side quest, it's the main mission. If our AI only works for 60% of the population, we haven't built medical AI. We've built specialized tools that perpetuate healthcare disparities. Dr. Thompson nodded slowly. This is exactly why we want you to chair our diversity initiative. Not as a token appointment, but as someone who understands that inclusion and innovation are inseparable. The meeting continued, covering partnership details, funding mechanisms, and timeline expectations. By the end, they'd agreed in principle to a $50 million collaboration that would put NeuralBridge's technology in 100 hospitals across diverse communities. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Thompson pulled Marcus aside. Can I speak with you privately? In his office, surrounded by decades of cancer research memorabilia, Dr. Thompson's formal demeanor softened. I watched your interview 3 times last night. My daughter sent it to me. She's a surgical resident at Johns Hopkins. She said it was the first time she'd seen someone articulate what she faces every day. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. I've been in this position for 5 years, Dr. Thompson continued. First Black director of NCI. You know what I spend half my time doing? Proving I deserve to be here, not through my work. My research speaks for itself, but through carefully managed appearances, strategic silences, calculated compromises. The twice as good tax, Marcus said quietly. Exactly. We have to be twice as good to get half as far. But yesterday, you did something I've never had the courage to do. You called out the tax collector. And now everyone wants me to be the face of that fight. Dr. Thompson smiled sadly. Welcome to the double bind. Excel at your work, and you're held up as proof the system works. Call out the system, and suddenly that's your new job description. So what do? You do both. You build your technology and save lives, and you use the platform you've earned to make sure others can do the same. It's exhausting, it's unfair, and it's necessary. They shook hands, an understanding passing between them that needed no words. On the flight back to New York, Marcus stared out the window while Sarah worked beside him. His phone continued its relentless buzzing, interview requests, partnership inquiries, messages of support and criticism in equal measure. You're awfully quiet, Sarah observed. Just thinking about what Dr. Thompson said, about doing both. The science and the symbolism? Yeah. I keep thinking about that medical student who tweeted yesterday, the 16-year-old who texted me, if my being visible helps them see possibilities, isn't that part of the mission too? Sarah smiled. Welcome to leadership. The real kind, not the kind they teach in business school. Back in New York, the office was in controlled chaos. The NIH news had leaked, and their valuation was climbing hourly. Raj met them at the elevator, looking harried. We've got a problem. That Fox piece Sterling warned you about, it's worse than we thought. They've got former Google colleagues questioning your judgment, investors you pitched early who passed, Even a professor from MIT suggesting you exaggerated your role in key research papers. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. How bad? They're painting you as a publicity hound who manufactured the Sterling confrontation to cover for weak technology. Sarah's face flushed with anger. That's ridiculous. We have data, trials, partnerships, which they're calling smoke and mirrors. Classic takedown piece. It airs tonight. Marcus walked to his office, his team trailing behind. Through the glass walls, he could see his employees pretending not to watch, the nervous energy palpable. Options? He asked. We could release our trial data early, Raj suggested. Show the receipts. Or go on the offensive, Sarah added. I've got contacts at the Times, the Journal. No. Marcus's voice was firm. We don't play that game. The data speaks when it's ready, not when we're under attack. So we just let them trash you on national television? Marcus turned to face his team. We let them reveal themselves. Every minute they spend attacking me is a minute they're not examining our technology. That tells the audience everything they need to know about their priorities. His phone rang. Richard Sterling. I've seen the Fox preview, Sterling said without preamble. It's a hit job. I've still got sources there. The reporter, Jessica Reeves, she's gunning for an anchor spot. Taking you down is her audition. Thanks for the heads up. I can go on record. Tell them about our conversation, how you handled yourself. No need, but I appreciate the offer. After hanging up, Marcus gathered his senior team. Listen carefully. We're about to enter the part where being visible means being a target. They'll dig into my past, twist my words, question my motives. That's the price of challenging the status quo. Dr. Okafor spoke up. We could do a data dump, show everyone what we've really built. And let them set our timeline? No. We stick to the plan. FDA submission next month. Expanded trials with NIH. Steady progress. The noise will fade. The work endures. That evening, Marcus watched the Fox segment from his apartment. It was worse than expected. A masterclass in insinuation and selective editing. Former colleagues suggested he'd taken credit for others' work. Investors who'd passed painted him as arrogant, unprepared. The professor, someone he'd never actually studied under, questioned his academic integrity. His phone exploded with messages, some supportive, some gleeful at his apparent comeuppance. His mother called, worried. Industry peers reached out with varying degrees of schadenfreude and sympathy. But something interesting happened on social media. The scientists and engineers who actually knew his work began pushing back. GitHub commits were shared showing his contributions to open-source projects. Former team members from Google detailed his leadership on successful initiatives. Medical professionals who'd participated in neural bridge trials posted their experiences. By midnight, a counter-narrative had emerged, not orchestrated by PR firms, but organic, from people who knew the difference between character assassination and character assessment. Sarah called at 1 a.m. You seeing this? The pushback? Yeah. It's beautiful. Actual scientists defending actual science. Who knew that was still possible? Maybe that's the real story. Not the attacks, but how the community responds. Poetic. Also, Cleveland Clinic just released a statement standing by our trial results. And get this, 3 of the investors Fox quoted, they're asking if they can get into our Series C. Marcus laughed despite himself. Funny how that works. Funny how truth works. Eventually. After hanging up, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, in labs and clinics and coding boot camps, people were doing the work. Building, testing, failing, trying again. The noise would always be there. The doubters, the gatekeepers, the character assassins. But so would the signal, the breakthroughs, the lives saved, the barriers broken. His father had been right. The work had to speak louder than the frustration. But sometimes, just sometimes, speaking truth to power cleared the path for the work to be heard. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Fox piece would have consequences. Some partners might get nervous. Some team members might question whether the spotlight was worth it. But tonight, watching his city pulse with ambition and resilience, Marcus felt something settle in his chest. He wasn't just building technology anymore. He was building a pathway, not just for himself, but for everyone who'd been told they didn't belong in rooms where the future was being decided. The price of visibility was vulnerability. The price of silence was invisibility. He'd chosen his path. Now it was time to walk it, one breakthrough at a time. As he prepared for bed, his phone buzzed one last time. A text from Dr. Thompson. Saw the hit piece, also saw the response. This is what changing the game looks like. Proud to be your partner in this fight. Marcus smiled and set his phone aside. Tomorrow the work continued. Tonight, he'd sleep knowing that sometimes the most powerful algorithm isn't written in code, it's written in courage. The next morning arrived with unexpected silence. Marcus's phone, usually buzzing by 6 a.m., lay quiet on his nightstand. The calm felt ominous, like the eye of a hurricane. He checked his emails, nothing urgent, just routine updates from the team. Even social media had moved on to the next controversy. At the office, the atmosphere was different. His team greeted him with something between sympathy and defiance, as if they'd all agreed to project extra positivity to counteract the previous night's attack. Sarah was already in the conference room with their PR consultant David Reeves and head counsel Patricia Morgan. "Good, you're here," Sarah said. "We need to discuss our response strategy." Marcus poured himself coffee. "There is no response strategy. We continue as planned." David shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, Marcus, we can't just ignore this. 3 institutional investors have called asking for clarification about the allegations. The Times wants a statement, and there's already chatter about the NIH reconsidering." "No, they're not," Marcus interrupted. "I spoke with Dr. Martinez this morning. They're moving forward as planned." Patricia cleared her throat. "However, we should prepare for potential legal action. Some of the statements made on Fox were borderline defamatory." "We're not suing anyone," Marcus said firmly. "That's exactly what they want, to drag this into a prolonged fight that distracts from our work." Sarah leaned forward. "Then what do we do?" "We accelerate." The room fell silent. "Accelerate what?" David asked. "Everything. The clinical trials, the FDA submission, the NIH rollout. If they want to question our technology, we'll drown them in data. Real results from real patients in real time." Sarah's eyes widened. "Marcus, that's aggressive. We're already pushing hard." "Then we push harder. How many lives are lost while we play it safe? While we let them control the narrative with innuendo and character attacks?" He turned to Patricia. "What's our legal exposure if we release preliminary trial data? As long as we're clear about its preliminary nature and follow FDA guidelines, minimal." "Sarah, can we fast-track the Cleveland Clinic expansion?" She pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "If we bring on additional data scientists and work with their team, possibly, but it'll stretch our resources." "Do it, and schedule a call with our Series C leads. If they're nervous about bad press, let's see how they feel about tripling our deployment speed." Over the next 2 weeks, Neural Bridge transformed into a different kind of machine. The typical startup chaos became laser-focused intensity. Teams worked in shifts to maintain 24-hour progress. Marcus himself was everywhere, reviewing code at 3 a.m., on calls with hospital administrators at dawn, presenting to investors by lunch. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, running trials at a community hospital in El Paso, called with trembling excitement. "Marcus, you need to see this. We ran your AI on archived scans from the past 5 years. It identified 17 cases of early-stage pancreatic cancer that human radiologists missed. 17. How many of those patients? 12 didn't make it, but 5 did because the cancer was caught later by other means. If we'd had your system then... The implication hung heavy in the digital connection between them. Can we verify these results? Marcus asked. Already did. Had 3 independent radiologists review. The AI was right every time. Within hours, similar reports began flowing in from other trial sites. The AI wasn't just meeting expectations, it was exceeding them dramatically. By week's end, they had documented evidence of over 100 missed early-stage cancers that their system had retroactively identified. Sarah burst into his office, breathless. Marcus, Johns Hopkins wants in. They're offering to fast-track a massive validation study, 10,000 archived cases. What's the catch? No catch. Dr. Peterson saw our El Paso data. Says if this is real, they want to be part of it. It's real. I know. That's what scares them. The momentum was building, but so was the pressure. 3 developers had quit, citing burnout. A key investor was getting cold feet after the Fox piece, and Marcus himself was surviving on 4 hours of sleep and endless coffee. Then came the call that changed everything. Mr. Chen, this is Robert Sullivan. The name was familiar, but Marcus couldn't place it immediately. You might not remember, but I wrote you a letter. Your AI found my pancreatic cancer at stage 1. Recognition flooded in. The letter on their wall. The man who lived to see his daughter graduate. Mr. Sullivan, of course. How are you? Alive, thanks to you. But that's not why I'm calling. I saw that hit piece on Fox. Made me angry enough to do something I've never done before. What's that? I called every major news outlet, told them my story, told them how your technology gave me my life back. And I wasn't the only one. Over the next hour, Marcus learned that Sullivan had organized. Dozens of trial participants, family members of patients whose cancers had been caught early, even radiologists who'd worked with the system, they'd formed an informal network. They were sharing their stories, pushing back against the narrative that Neural Bridge was all hype. We're not letting them tear down something that saves lives, Sullivan said firmly. Not on our watch. After the call, Marcus sat in his darkened office, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Your father always said the work speaks for itself, but sometimes it speaks through the people it touches. The tide began to turn. CNN picked up Sullivan's story. Then the Washington Post ran a feature on the El Paso findings. The narrative shifted from personality to impact, from allegations to evidence. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. Jessica Reeves, the Fox reporter who'd orchestrated the hit piece, reached out through intermediaries she wanted to meet. Against his team's advice, Marcus agreed. They met at a neutral location, a hotel bar in Midtown, all sleek surfaces and dim lighting. Reeves looked younger in person, her on-air confidence replaced by visible anxiety. Thank you for meeting me. Marcus waited. I owe you an apology, she began. Not the corporate kind, a real one. When I was putting together that piece, I was focused on making a name for myself, taking down the tech darling of the moment. At what cost? That's just it. I didn't think about cost. Until my producer got a call from his sister. She's an oncologist in Dallas. Apparently, your system had just identified cancer in one of her patients that she'd missed on 3 previous scans. Marcus remained silent. She tore into him, said we were attacking technology that could save thousands of lives, made him watch the Sullivan interview, made me watch it too. Reeves took a shaky breath. I spent my whole career thinking the story was about taking powerful people down a peg. I never considered that sometimes the story is about lifting important work up. What do you want from me? Forgiveness? No. I want to make it right. I have footage we didn't air, interviews with doctors who praised your system, data we ignored because it didn't fit the narrative. I want to do a follow-up piece. The real story. Marcus studied her. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. But you should trust the story. The real one. About how bias in media can be just as damaging as bias in tech. About how we almost helped silence innovation that could save lives. After a long pause, Marcus nodded. Send me an outline. No promises. 2 days later, Richard Sterling called. I hear you met with Jessica Reeves. Word travels fast. She called me, wanted my perspective on you. I told her the truth, that you're the real deal, and I was the one who needed educating. What did she say? That she was starting to understand that. Also, I have news. The diversity series I mentioned, it's been greenlit, primetime slot. And the network wants to lead with our story. Not just the confrontation, but the conversation after, the coffee shop meeting. Why? Because it's real. Because it shows that change is possible. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about heroes and villains, but about people learning to see each other clearly. The weeks blended together in a blur of activity. The Johns Hopkins study validated their results. The FDA accelerated their review timeline. The NIH partnership expanded to include international sites. And quietly, without fanfare, lives were being saved. Marcus stood in front of their wall of letters, now expanded to include emails and messages from around the world. Each one represented a life touched, a future preserved. Sarah joined him. Remember when you said we'd drown them in data? Yeah. Mission accomplished. Even Fox is running positive coverage now. Reeves's follow-up piece was actually good. It was honest. That's different. You know what's funny? The confrontation with Sterling, the Fox hit piece, all of it, it might have been the best thing that happened to us. It forced everyone to actually look at what we're building. Marcus touched one of the letters. The work speaks for itself, but sometimes it needs a microphone. And sometimes the microphone finds you whether you want it or not. His phone buzzed. Dr. Thompson from NCI. Preliminary results from expanded trials are extraordinary. We're recommending nationwide implementation. Also, the Diversity Initiative launch was a success. Your keynote resonated across the entire research community. Marcus smiled. He'd given that speech reluctantly, still uncomfortable with being positioned as a spokesman rather than just a scientist. But he'd realized something important. Visibility wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every researcher, every innovator, every dreamer who'd been told they didn't belong in rooms where the future was being built. As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the absence of challenge, those would always exist, but the presence of purpose, aligned with impact, amplified by unexpected allies. The phone rang again. Cleveland Clinic. They'd just diagnosed their 1,000th early-stage cancer using the NeuroBridge system. The head of oncology wanted to personally thank him. Dr. Chen, she said, using the honorific his PhD had earned, but he rarely claimed, do you understand what you've built here? This isn't just technology, it's hope. Quantifiable, measurable hope. After the call, Marcus walked through the office. His team was still hard at work, but the frantic energy had evolved into something more sustainable. They'd weathered the storm and emerged stronger. In the break room, he found a group of interns watching the Sterling Diversity Series premiere. His own face appeared on screen, followed by Sterling's, then the coffee shop where they'd had their real conversation. That's our CEO, one intern whispered to another. I know, isn't it cool? He actually changed that guy's mind. He changed more than that. Marcus slipped away before they noticed him. Back in his office, he pulled out his phone and composed a text to Richard Sterling. "Watch the premiere. You did good." The response was immediate. We both did. Outside, the city hummed with its eternal energy. Somewhere, in hospitals and clinics across the country, their AI was quietly working, finding patterns human eyes might miss, catching diseases before they could claim lives. And somewhere, a young person was watching, seeing possibility where others saw barriers, finding courage in visibility, drawing strength from truth spoken plainly. The work continued. The work always continued. But now it carried with it something more than algorithms and data. It carried stories, connections, the weight of lives touched and futures preserved. Marcus Chen had set out to build technology. He'd ended up building something larger, a bridge between what was and what could be, strong enough to bear the weight of all who would cross it toward a better tomorrow. 6 months after the Sterling interview, Neural Bridge occupied 3 floors of their Manhattan building. The team had grown to 200 employees, and their AI system was deployed in 147 hospitals across the country. But with success came new challenges that Marcus hadn't anticipated. He stood in the boardroom, facing a group of stern-faced executives from MedTech Global, one of the world's largest medical device companies. Their CEO, Harrison Mitchell, a silver-haired man with the bearing of a former military officer, was making what he clearly considered a generous offer. $3 billion, Mitchell repeated as if Marcus hadn't heard him the first time. Cash and stock options. You'd head our AI division, keep your team intact, and have resources you can only dream of now. Marcus glanced at Sarah, who sat beside him with a carefully neutral expression. They'd rehearsed this moment, knowing it would come eventually. When you build something valuable, someone always wants to buy it. "We appreciate the offer," Marcus began, but Mitchell cut him off. "This isn't just about money, Chen, it's about impact. With our distribution network, your technology could be in every hospital in America within a year, globally, within 2. Think of the lives you could save." The number was staggering, more than they'd imagined during their late-night coding sessions in that cramped startup space. It would make every early employee wealthy, reward their investors handsomely, and give them resources to accelerate development exponentially. "We need time to consider." Of course, Mitchell stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait." He paused at the door. "Oh, and Chen, this stays confidential. We wouldn't want the market getting unstable." After they left, Sarah finally spoke. $3 billion. Yeah, that's life-changing money. For everyone. They sat in silence, the weight of the decision settling over them like fog. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see their team working. The engineers who'd trusted his vision, the medical professionals who'd left prestigious positions to join a startup, the young graduates who saw Neural Bridge as more than a company. "You're thinking about saying no," Sarah observed. "I'm thinking about what we'd lose, our independence, our culture, our ability to prioritize impact over profit. MedTech has good distribution and a history of buying innovation to bury it. Remember the cardiac monitor startup they acquired in 2019? Where's that technology now?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Shelved because it competed with their existing product line." "Exactly. But the decision wasn't that simple." That evening, Marcus convened a meeting with his senior leadership team. The debate was passionate and divided. "We have a fiduciary duty to our investors," argued their CFO, Jennifer Walsh. "This return would be extraordinary." "We also have a duty to our mission," countered Dr. Okafor. "What good is money if the technology never reaches the patients who need it most?" Raj, their head of engineering, raised another point. What about the team? Some people joined for the startup experience, others for the mission. A sale changes everything. The meeting lasted hours with no clear consensus. As Marcus walked home that night, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Heard about the MedTech offer. Don't sell out. A friend. He stopped mid-stride. The message felt ominous. How did anyone outside their inner circle know about the offer? Mitchell's warning about confidentiality suddenly felt less like business protocol and more like a threat. At home, Marcus called James Chen, his first investor and mentor. They're playing hardball, James said after hearing about the message. Classic MedTech. They leak just enough to create pressure, then blame you if things go sideways. What would you do? Wrong question. What does your gut tell you? Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the city lights. That we're just getting started. That selling now would betray everything we've built. Then you have your answer, but Marcus? If you say no, they'll come after you. Not openly, but through proxies. Competitive patents, regulatory challenges, talent poaching. Are you ready for that? No, but I wasn't ready for any of this. The next morning brought unexpected support. Robert Sullivan, the cancer survivor who'd organized patient advocacy for them, called with news. Marcus, something's happening. We're getting contacted by patient groups, medical associations, even some politicians. They're all asking the same thing. Is Neural Bridge selling to MedTech? How did they? Doesn't matter. What matters is the response. People are terrified you'll sell. They've seen what happens when big corporations buy innovative health tech. They're organizing. Organizing how? Letters to editors, social media campaigns. Some are even talking about protests. The message is clear. Neural Bridge belongs to the people it serves, not to the highest bidder. By noon, Don't Sell Neural Bridge was trending. Doctors shared stories of how the AI had changed their diagnostic capabilities. Patients posted about early detections that saved their lives. Medical students wrote about how Neural Bridge represented the future of healthcare they wanted to practice. Sarah burst into his office. You need to see this. She pulled up a video. Richard Sterling, on his new diversity-focused show, was discussing the rumored acquisition. Sometimes, Sterling was saying, the most important business decisions aren't about business at all. They're about values, about whether we believe innovation should serve profit or people. Marcus Chen taught me that lesson once. I hope he remembers it now. The pressure was building from all sides. That afternoon, 3 of their major investors requested an emergency board meeting. Marcus knew what was coming. David Walsh from Sequoia opened the meeting bluntly. $3 billion is an exceptional exit. Our LPs are expecting us to advocate for this deal. Even if it means the technology gets shelved, Marcus asked. That's speculative. MedTech says they'll accelerate deployment. MedTech says a lot of things, James interrupted. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've seen them kill more innovation than they've scaled. The debate raged. Financial responsibility versus mission integrity. Shareholder value versus patient outcomes. Marcus listened, absorbing every argument, feeling the weight of leadership in a way he never had before. Finally, he spoke. I want to tell you all a story. Last week, I got a letter from a grandmother in rural Mississippi. Her local clinic just got our system through the NIH partnership. 2 days after installation, it caught her granddaughter's thyroid anomaly, something 3 previous doctors had missed. That girl is getting treatment now instead of waiting until it was too late. He looked around the room. That clinic would never be on MedTech's deployment list. Too small, too remote, not profitable enough. But that girl's life matters. That grandmother's relief matters. That's why we built this. So you're saying no? Walsh pressed. I'm saying we need to find another way. What if we raised more capital instead? stayed independent, but accelerated our growth? At what valuation? Another investor asked skeptically. Whatever it takes to keep our mission intact. The room fell silent. Then James spoke. I'll lead the round. 50 million at a 4 billion valuation. Gasps echoed around the table. It was an aggressive bet, valuing them higher than the acquisition offer. James, Walsh started, that's necessary. Sometimes you invest in more than returns. Sometimes you invest in the future you want to see. One by one, other investors committed. Not all of them. Some would later sell their stakes in the secondary market, but enough to give Marcus the backing he needed. The next day, Marcus called Harrison Mitchell. We appreciate your generous offer, he said carefully, but we've decided to remain independent. The silence on the other end was arctic. Then, you're making a mistake, Chen. This industry doesn't forgive mistakes. Maybe, but I'd rather fail pursuing our mission than succeed abandoning it. You'll regret this. Perhaps, but not as much as I'd regret selling. The call ended with icy formality. Within hours, the challenges began. A patent troll emerged, claiming their AI violated obscure processing patents. 2 key engineers received lucrative offers from competitors. A regulatory inquiry was launched into their clinical trial methodology. But something else happened too. The medical community rallied. Prominent physicians penned op-eds supporting Neural Bridge's independence. Patient advocacy groups organized funding drives. Even some of MedTech's institutional investors expressed concern about their tactics. Dr. Thompson from the National Cancer Institute called with unexpected news. Marcus, I've just come from a meeting with the FDA commissioner. They're expediting your approval process. Apparently, the patient advocacy movement got their attention. We didn't organize that. No, but you inspired it. By standing firm on your values, you gave people something to believe in. That's rarer than any technology. The next months were a blur of growth and challenge. They raised $200 million in their Series D, led by an unexpected consortium of impact investors and healthcare foundations. The FDA approval came through, the fastest ever granted for AI diagnostic technology. Their system expanded to 500 hospitals, with a focus on underserved communities. But the real validation came in quieter moments. Like the email from a pediatric oncologist in Detroit. Your AI caught neuroblastoma in a 3-year-old today. Stage 1, completely treatable. Without it, we might not have found it until stage 4. This child will grow up because you said no to $3 billion. Or the call from his mother. Your father's old hospital in Taiwan wants to implement your system. They said they're proud one of their own is changing medicine. Sarah found him one evening, staring at their wall of patient letters now covering an entire corridor. Regrets? She asked. Every day. And none at all. That makes no sense. Leadership rarely does. He touched a letter from the Mississippi grandmother. We could have been richer. We could have been safer. But we couldn't have been this. No, Sarah agreed. We couldn't. As midnight approached, Marcus drafted an email to the team. 6 months ago, we faced a choice between wealth and purpose. We chose purpose. It hasn't been easy. We've been sued, threatened, and attacked in the press. We've watched competitors with deeper pockets try to replicate our work. But we've also saved thousands of lives. We've proven that innovation can serve humanity without sacrificing integrity. We've shown that sometimes the most valuable things can't be bought. Tomorrow, we start our next chapter. New challenges await, technical, financial, and political. But we face them together, guided by the same North Star that brought us here, the belief that technology should serve all of humanity, not just those who can afford it. The work continues. And so do we. He hit send and leaned back in his chair. Through his window, the city sparkled with possibility. Somewhere out there, Their AI was working through the night, analyzing scans, catching patterns, saving lives. And somewhere, a young entrepreneur was watching, learning that success could be measured in more than dollars. The phone rang. Richard Sterling. Saw the news about you turning down MedTech. Wanted to say that took guts. Or foolishness. Same thing sometimes. Listen, I'm doing a special on healthcare innovation and corporate responsibility. Would you? Yes, Sterling laughed. I didn't even finish asking. Doesn't matter. If it helps people understand why this matters, I'm in. After hanging up, Marcus walked through the quiet office. The journey from that confrontational interview to this moment felt both eternal and instantaneous. He'd started by challenging assumptions about who belonged in tech. Now he was challenging assumptions about what tech was for. The work continued. The work always continued. But now it carried the weight of choice, the knowledge that they'd chosen impact over ease, mission over money, purpose over profit. And in that choice, they'd found something more valuable than any acquisition offer, the power to shape the future on their own terms. The patent lawsuit arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who seemed to take particular pleasure in requiring Marcus's personal signature. The stack of papers was thick enough to be a novella, filled with legal jargon that essentially accused Neural Bridge of violating patents held by a company called Medical AI Innovations LLC, a company that, according to Sarah's quick research, had been incorporated just 3 weeks earlier. Shell company, she said, scanning through corporate filings on her laptop. Registered in Delaware. No public presence, no actual products. Classic patent troll setup. Funded by whom? Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer. The paper trail gets murky, but I'd bet my stock options it traces back to MedTech. Patricia Morgan, their general counsel, joined them in the conference room, her expression grim. They're seeking an injunction to halt all deployment of our AI system pending resolution of the patent dispute. If granted, it would freeze everything. Trials, installations, even existing hospital implementations. The weight of the threat settled over them. After years of fighting bias, building technology, and saving lives, they were facing a battle that had nothing to do with merit and everything to do with money and power. Options, Marcus asked. We fight it, obviously. But these cases can drag on for years. The plaintiff knows that. They're counting on it. They want to bleed us dry with legal fees or force a settlement. What kind of settlement? Patricia grimaced. My guess? They'll eventually offer to drop the suit if we accept MedTech's acquisition offer. The strategy was transparent but effective. Fight a war of attrition against a startup's limited resources, then swoop in as a savior with a buyout that now seemed generous compared to bankruptcy. Sarah slammed her laptop shut. This is extortion. This is business, Patricia corrected grimly. Welcome to the big leagues. Over the next week, the attack intensified. 2 more patent lawsuits materialized from different shell companies. A prominent medical journal received an anonymous submission questioning their clinical trial methodology. 3 key employees were poached by competitors with offers they couldn't match. But something unexpected happened. The medical community, which had rallied around them once before, began mobilizing again. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, chief of oncology at Seattle General, penned a viral blog post titled, "When Patents Kill Patients," detailing how the lawsuits would delay life-saving technology. The post sparked a movement. Doctors began sharing stories on social media with fewer patients over patents. Medical students organized protests outside the courthouse where the injunction hearing was scheduled. Even some pharmaceutical executives, typically protective of patent rights, spoke out against what they saw as abuse of the system. Marcus found himself at the center of another storm, but this time he wasn't alone. The night before the hearing, his phone rang with a call from an unexpected source, Harrison Mitchell, CEO of MedTech. Let's cut to the chase, Chen. You know what this is about. Enlighten me. You had your chance to exit gracefully. Now things get messy, but I'm not unreasonable. We can make this all go away, the lawsuits, the bad press, the regulatory scrutiny. Just take the original offer. The same $3 billion? 2.5. Consider it a lesson in negotiation. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. And if I refuse? Then we'll see how long your idealism lasts against reality. These lawsuits will drain your resources. Your investors will get nervous. Your team will start looking for stability elsewhere. Eventually, you'll come back to the table, but the number will be much lower. You're assuming I care more about money than mission. Mitchell laughed coldly. Everyone has a breaking point, Chen, even idealists. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his darkened office, staring at the wall of patient letters. Each one represented a life touched, a future preserved. How many more would be lost if the injunction succeeded? How many people would die waiting while lawyers argued about patent claims? His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Saw the news about the lawsuits. Remember what your father used to say, the bamboo that bends doesn't break. Flexibility in the face of force. Adaptation rather than rigid resistance. The words sparked an idea. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency all-hands meeting. The entire team gathered, faces reflecting the strain of recent weeks. I won't lie to you, he began. We're under attack, not because we've failed, but because we've succeeded too well. We've threatened established interests, and they're fighting back with the only weapons they have, money and legal manipulation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But here's what they don't understand. They think we're just a company. We're not. We're a movement, and movements don't die in courtrooms. He pulled up a presentation. I want to announce something, effective immediately. We're open sourcing our core AI architecture. Gasps echoed through the room. Sarah's eyes widened. Even Patricia looked shocked. The patent trolls can't sue the entire world. If our technology is everywhere, implemented by thousands of developers, adapted by hundreds of institutions, they can't stop it with injunctions. The knowledge will be free. But Marcus, Raj protested, that's our competitive advantage. No, our competitive advantage is our team, our vision, our commitment to doing this right. The algorithms are just tools. Let's give those tools to everyone. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Within hours, developers worldwide were downloading the code, examining the architecture, beginning their own implementations. Medical schools incorporated it into their curricula. International health organizations started adaptation projects for developing nations. MedTech's strategy crumbled. You can't patent troll something that's freely available. You can't injunct knowledge that's already spreading. The shell companies quietly withdrew their lawsuits. But the boldest move came from an unexpected alliance. Richard Sterling, now a prominent voice in ethical journalism, organized a summit bringing together tech leaders, healthcare executives, patient advocates, and policymakers. The theme: innovation without exploitation. Marcus delivered the keynote, standing before an audience that included both allies and former adversaries. 18 months ago, I sat in a television studio and experienced something many of you have felt, the moment when someone looks at you and sees everything except your capability. That moment sparked a conversation about bias in tech. Today, we're having a bigger conversation about purpose in innovation. He clicked through slides showing their open source implementation already being used in hospitals across 12 countries. We faced a choice: protect our intellectual property or protect patients, maximize shareholder value or maximize human value. We chose humanity. And something remarkable happened. We didn't lose value. We created it. Our company is stronger, our mission clearer, our impact broader. The summit led to unexpected collaborations. Major tech companies pledged to support the open source initiative. Healthcare systems formed coalitions to implement the technology. Even some former critics became advocates. Harrison Mitchell attended the summit, sitting in the back row, his expression unreadable. During a break, he approached Marcus. "You've made quite a mess of traditional business models," he said, "or shown a better one." Mitchell studied him. "You really believe this? That giving away your core technology makes business sense?" "I believe that sometimes the most profitable thing you can do is forget about profit. Focus on impact, and value follows." Naive. Maybe. But we're still here, still growing, still saving lives. How's that patent strategy working out? Mitchell's jaw tightened, but something shifted in his eyes. Not agreement, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. 6 months later, Neural Bridge's impact was undeniable. The open-source initiative had spawned dozens of implementations, each adapted for specific medical needs. Pediatric versions optimized for childhood cancers, cardiac variants focusing on heart disease, neurological adaptations for brain disorders. The company itself thrived, offering enterprise support, custom implementations, and advanced features built on the open foundation. Revenue grew, but more importantly, lives saved multiplied exponentially. Marcus stood in the new office. They'd expanded again, taking over the entire building. The wall of patient letters now included messages from around the world, in dozens of languages, each telling a story of early detection, successful treatment, preserved futures. Sarah joined him, holding a tablet with their latest metrics. The WHO estimates our technology has contributed to over 50,000 early cancer detections globally this year, and next year, they're projecting 200,000, more as implementation spreads. Marcus touched a letter from a young girl in Mumbai, thanking them for saving her mother. "Remember when we thought we were just building diagnostic software? We were building diagnostic software. We just didn't realize we were also building a new model for how technology serves humanity." That evening, Marcus received an unexpected visit from Richard Sterling, now a close ally and friend. "I need to tell you something," Sterling said, accepting a coffee. "That first interview, I've been thinking about it a lot, about how I dismissed you, made assumptions, tried to fit you into my preconceived narrative. We've moved past that. Have we? Or have we just moved forward? There's a difference." Sterling set down his cup. "I've spent months reporting on your story, watching how you've handled everything from that confrontation to the patent attacks to this open-source revolution, and I realized something. That interview didn't just change our relationship, it changed how business gets done." "That's a bit dramatic." "Is it? Look around. Major tech companies are reconsidering their IP strategies. Investors are funding mission-driven startups they would have dismissed before. Medical conferences now include sessions on inclusive innovation. You didn't just build a company, Marcus. You shifted the paradigm." Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the city. "My father came to this country with nothing but education and ambition. He faced closed doors, lowered expectations, constant proof of worth. He used to say that success wasn't just personal, it was generational. That we build stairs for others to climb. And now I understand what he meant. Every barrier we break makes it easier for the next person. Every assumption we challenge opens new possibilities. Every time we choose mission over margin, we show another way forward." Sterling stood to leave, then paused. "You know, when we first met, I thought I was the one teaching you about how the world works. And now? Now I realize you were teaching all of us how it could work better." After Sterling left, Marcus returned to his desk, where a new challenge awaited: proposals for Neural Bridge's next initiative, using AI to address healthcare disparities in underserved communities globally. The work continued, evolving, expanding. His phone lit up with a message from Dr. Thompson at NCI. Congressional hearing next week on AI in healthcare. They want you to testify. Ready to shape policy now? Marcus smiled, typing back, ready to try. Because that was the truth about changing the world. You never finished. Each success revealed new challenges, each breakthrough uncovered new possibilities. But with every step, the path became clearer, not just for him, but for everyone who would follow. The boy who had watched his immigrant parents navigate a system that underestimated them had become a man reshaping that system. The programmer who had built algorithms to detect cancer had discovered something more powerful than any code, the ability to inspire others to build alongside him. As night fell over Manhattan, Marcus prepared for tomorrow's challenges. The patent trolls might return. New competitors would emerge. Skeptics would doubt, critics would criticize, but none of that mattered as much as the lives being saved, the barriers being broken, the futures being preserved. Because in the end, that was the only metric that counted, not shareholder value or market dominance, but human impact. The work continued, the movement grew, and somewhere, a young innovator was watching, learning that success could be measured in lives touched rather than dollars earned, in possibilities opened rather than profits captured. The future was being written, one breakthrough at a time, by those brave enough to challenge not just bias, but the very definition of success itself. The congressional hearing room was a study in institutional power, wood-paneled walls, formal seating arrangements, and an atmosphere that seemed designed to remind witnesses of their place in the governmental hierarchy. Marcus adjusted his tie, seated at the witness table with its single microphone, facing the raised dais where 11 members of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology would soon interrogate him about artificial intelligence in healthcare. Sarah sat behind him in the gallery, along with Dr. Thompson from NCI and several other supporters. The room was already filling with staffers, journalists, and industry observers. Marcus noticed Harrison Mitchell from MedTech in the back row, his expression unreadable. Committee Chair Representative Maria Vasquez gavelled the session to order. Today we examine the opportunities and challenges of artificial intelligence in medical diagnostics, with particular focus on issues of access, equity, and innovation. Our first witness is Mr. Marcus Chen, CEO of NeuralBridge Technologies. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. Thank you, Chairwoman Vasquez, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss how AI can transform healthcare and the responsibilities that come with that transformation. His opening statement outlined NeuralBridge's journey, from startup to industry leader, from proprietary technology to open source movement, from saving hundreds of lives to impacting thousands globally. He emphasized how diversity and development led to better outcomes for all patients. Then came the questions. Representative Bill Mason, known for his skepticism of tech regulation, led off. Mr. Chen, you've made quite a name for yourself championing what you call ethical AI. But isn't that just marketing? A way to differentiate yourself from competitors? Marcus had expected this. Representative Mason, when our AI fails to detect cancer in a patient because it wasn't trained on diverse data sets, that's not a marketing problem. It's a life or death problem. Ethics in AI isn't a buzzword. It's about whether our technology serves all Americans equally. But you've open-sourced your technology, Mason pressed. How can you ensure ethical use when anyone can access it? By setting standards and building community. Our open-source initiative includes ethical guidelines, diverse training data, and a global community of developers committed to healthcare equity. We've found that transparency breeds responsibility. Representative Alicia Torres, a physician before entering politics, asked about clinical validation. Marcus walked through their rigorous testing protocols, the peer-reviewed studies, and the real-world outcomes. Dr. Mr. Chen, she corrected herself. Doctor is fine. Marcus said with a slight smile. PhD in computational neuroscience. Dr. Chen, then, can you explain why diversity in AI development teams matters for patient outcomes? This was Marcus's sweet spot. He described how their diverse team had caught biases invisible to homogeneous groups, how doctors from different backgrounds identified disease presentations that varied across populations, how engineers from various cultures approached problems differently. Innovation isn't just about new ideas, he concluded. It's about perspectives that challenge assumptions we don't even know we're making. The questioning continued for 2 hours. Some representatives were supportive, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. Representative James Crawford, who had received significant campaign contributions from traditional medical device manufacturers, was particularly aggressive. Mr. Chen, isn't it true that your company's valuation has skyrocketed since you began what some might call publicity stunts? The confrontation with Richard Sterling, the refusal of MedTech's acquisition offer, the open source announcement, all very dramatic, very public. Marcus felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice level. Representative Crawford, what you call publicity stunts, I call standing up for principles. Yes, our valuation has increased. But more importantly, our technology has detected over 75,000 early-stage cancers that might otherwise have been missed. I'll take saving lives over managing optics any day. A murmur ran through the gallery. Crawford reddened but pressed on. You speak of principles, but isn't it true that you've personally become quite wealthy from this venture? I'm compensated as a CEO, yes, but if wealth were my primary motivation, I would have accepted MedTech's $3 billion offer. Instead, I chose to keep our technology independent and accessible. That decision has allowed us to serve rural hospitals, community clinics, and healthcare systems in developing nations, markets that traditional companies often ignore as unprofitable. Chairwoman Vasquez intervened. Let's return to policy implications. Dr. Chen, what regulatory framework would you recommend for medical AI? Marcus had prepared extensively for this question. We need regulation that ensures safety and efficacy without stifling innovation. I propose a 3-pillar approach. First, mandatory diverse testing across all demographic groups before approval. Second, ongoing monitoring of real-world performance with public reporting of any biases that emerge. Third, requirements for explainable AI. Healthcare providers must understand how the system reaches its conclusions. And who should oversee this? Vasquez asked. A joint effort between FDA, NIH, and a new advisory board that includes technologists, clinicians, ethicists, and patient advocates. The current system wasn't designed for AI. We need evolved oversight for evolved technology. As the hearing wound down, Representative Johnson, the ranking member, asked a final question. Dr. Chen, you've become something of a symbol, a successful entrepreneur who's challenged both technical and social barriers. What message do you have for young innovators watching today? Marcus paused, thinking of all the messages he'd received from students, aspiring entrepreneurs, and young professionals who saw their own struggles reflected in his journey. I'd tell them that the barriers are real, but they're not immovable. That excellence isn't enough. You also need endurance. That sometimes the most innovative thing you can do is insist on being heard. And that true success isn't just personal achievement, it's opening doors for others. After the hearing, the corridors buzzed with activity. Reporters sought comments, lobbyists cornered legislators, and staffers hurried to draft memos. Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and critics alike. Harrison Mitchell approached, his expression thoughtful. Impressive performance, he said quietly. Just telling the truth. That's what's impressive. You know, I've been in this industry for 30 years, always believed competition was about crushing opponents, maximizing shareholder value, dominating markets. He paused, watching you these past months. Maybe I've been playing the wrong game." Before Marcus could respond, Mitchell walked away, leaving questions hanging in the air. That evening, Marcus's testimony led every major news network. The footage of him calmly dismantling Representative Crawford's attacks went viral. Dar's ethical AI and Nash healthcare for all trended on social media. But Marcus was already focused on what came next. In his hotel room, he video called his team back in New York. "Preliminary feedback is positive," reported Patricia Morgan. "Several committee members want to work with us on drafting legislation. The FDA is accelerating their AI framework review. And Marcus," the White House called. "They want to discuss a potential advisory role." "One step at a time," Marcus cautioned. "Today was about planting seeds. Now we need to tend them carefully." After the call, he checked his messages. Hundreds had poured in, from medical professionals, patient advocates, fellow entrepreneurs, and students. One caught his eye, from a young black woman in medical school. "Dr. Chen, I watched your testimony during a break between rotations. When Representative Crawford tried to diminish your achievements, you responded with facts and dignity. You showed me how to stand firm without losing myself in anger. Thank you for being visible, for being excellent, and for being human." Marcus stared at the message, feeling the weight of representation he'd initially resisted. The responsibility wasn't just to build technology or run a company. It was to model possibility for those who'd been told they didn't belong in certain spaces. His phone rang. It was his mother. "I watched every minute," she said without preamble. "Your father would have been so proud, not just of what you said, but how you said it. With strength, but without bitterness. With confidence, but without arrogance. I learned from the best, Ma. You learned, but you also evolved. Your father's generation had to hide their anger, swallow their frustration. You found a way to channel it into change." After they hung up, Marcus walked to his hotel window, looking out at the illuminated Capitol dome. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The legislative process was just beginning. Implementation would be complex. Resistance from entrenched interests would continue. But something fundamental had shifted. The conversation was no longer about whether AI belonged in healthcare, but how to ensure it served everyone equally. The question wasn't whether diverse perspectives mattered in tech development, but how to systematically include them. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard Sterling. "Watched your testimony. Remember our first interview? Look how far we've both come. Proud to know you." Marcus smiled, remembering that pivotal moment when he'd chosen truth over politeness, impact over comfort. That choice had set everything in motion. The confrontations, the victories, the movement that now extended far beyond Neural Bridge. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah, holding a laptop and grinning. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up their analytics dashboard. "Since your testimony ended, we've had over 10,000 downloads of our open source code. Medical schools from 6 countries have reached out about partnerships. And look at this. MedTech stock is down 3% in after-hours trading. That's not the goal. No, but it's a signal. The market is recognizing that the future of medical technology isn't just about profit margins. It's about trust, accessibility, impact. You change the conversation, Marcus. Not just today, but over these past 18 months. They spent the next hour planning, strategizing, preparing for the opportunities and challenges ahead. The congressional testimony was a milestone, not a conclusion. The real work, turning policy into practice, vision into reality, lay ahead. As Sarah left, she paused at the door. "You know what's remarkable? A year and a half ago, you were fighting to be heard in one TV studio. Today, you shaped national policy in front of Congress. That's not just personal growth, That's systemic change. Alone again, Marcus returned to his messages, reading stories from patients whose lives had been touched by their technology, from healthcare workers who'd found new capabilities in their AI tools, from researchers building on their open-source foundation. Each message reinforced a truth he'd gradually come to accept. Leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking better questions. Success wasn't about personal achievement. It was about collective advancement. And change wasn't about individual moments of courage. It was about sustained commitment to a vision larger than oneself. The boy who'd watched his immigrant parents navigate a world that underestimated them had become a man reshaping that world's assumptions. The engineer who'd built algorithms had discovered that the most powerful codes weren't written in Python or Java. They were written in courage, persistence, and unwavering commitment to equity. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Critics would emerge. Systems would resist change. Progress would face setbacks. But tonight, in a hotel room overlooking the center of American democracy, Marcus Chen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Not for what he'd achieved, but for what had been set in motion. The future of healthcare technology was being rewritten, one algorithm, one policy, one changed mind at a time. And this was just the beginning. 2 years after that pivotal congressional testimony, Marcus stood on the stage of the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., accepting the National Medal of Technology and Innovation. The president had just placed the medal around his neck, but Marcus's thoughts were elsewhere, on the journey that had brought him here, and more importantly, on the lives changed along the way. In the audience, his mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Beside her were Sarah Kim, now NeuralBridge's president, Richard Sterling, who had become an unlikely friend and advocate, and Dr. Thompson from the National Cancer Institute. Behind them sat team members, partners, and patients whose lives had been touched by their technology. As Marcus approached the podium, he caught sight of Harrison Mitchell in the third row. The former MedTech CEO had stepped down 6 months ago, citing a philosophical evolution about the purpose of medical technology. He now ran a nonprofit focused on healthcare access in underserved communities. "Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished guests, and colleagues," Marcus began. "This medal recognizes not just technological innovation, but something more fundamental. The idea that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. 3 years ago, I sat in a television studio and experienced something many of you have felt. That moment when someone looks at you and sees everything except your capability. That moment could have ended differently. I could have smiled, played along, avoided confrontation. A knowing murmur rippled through the audience. The Sterling interview had become legendary, studied in business schools and journalism programs as a turning point in how media covered diversity in tech. Instead, I chose truth over comfort. That choice set in motion a series of events that led us here. But this medal doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every engineer who worked nights to perfect our algorithms, every doctor who trusted AI to augment their judgment, every patient who participated in trials, every advocate who fought for equitable health care. Marcus's voice strengthened. It belongs to my parents, immigrants who taught me that barriers exist to be overcome, not accepted. To my father, who didn't live to see this day, but whose perseverance made it possible. He touched the medal briefly. Today, NeuralBridge's technology operates in over 2,000 hospitals across 47 countries. We've contributed to the detection of over 300,000 early-stage cancers. Our open-source initiative has spawned innovations we never imagined. AI systems for rare diseases, pediatric applications, rural health solutions. The statistics were impressive, but Marcus knew the real impact was in individual stories. Like Maria Gonzalez, the doctor from El Paso who had pioneered their community health program, now training physicians across Latin America. Or James Park, the teenager whose brain tumor was caught by their system, now a pre-med student planning to specialize in AI-assisted neurosurgery. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Marcus continued, isn't technological, it's cultural. We've helped shift the conversation from who belongs in tech to how do we ensure tech serves everyone, from how do we maximize profit to how do we maximize impact. He glanced at Richard Sterling, remembering their first encounter. We've learned that changing minds isn't about winning arguments. It's about opening dialogues. That true innovation requires not just brilliant code, but diverse perspectives. That sometimes the most radical act is simply insisting on being seen and heard. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Marcus raised his hand for quiet. This recognition comes with responsibility. Healthcare disparities still exist. Bias in AI remains a challenge. Access to life-saving technology is still limited by geography and economics. The work continues. After the ceremony, the reception buzzed with energy. Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers, including several young entrepreneurs who saw him as a role model. "Dr. Chen," said a young black woman, her startup badge identifying her as a biotech founder, "I was in high school when I saw your interview with Sterling. My guidance counselor had just told me to consider more realistic career goals than biomedical engineering. Your example changed my trajectory." Similar stories emerged throughout the evening. A Latino programmer who'd joined the open source initiative and now led a health tech startup. A Vietnamese-American medical student inspired to pursue computational diagnostics. A Native American developer adapting their AI for tribal health services. Richard Sterling approached during a quieter moment carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "Quite a journey from that studio, eh?" Marcus accepted the glass. "For both of us. You know, I've been thinking about that day a lot lately. I went into that interview with decades of unconscious bias thinking I was one of the good ones. You didn't just challenge my assumptions about you, you challenged my assumptions about myself. And now?" Sterling smiled. "Now I host a show about innovation and inclusion. My daughter actually returns my calls, and I get to tell people I was there when Marcus Chen changed the game. Not bad for a humbling experience." They clinked glasses as Harrison Mitchell joined them. "Gentlemen," he nodded. "Congratulations, Marcus, well deserved." "Thank you, Harrison. I hear your nonprofit is doing important work." Mitchell chuckled ruefully. "Funny how perspective changes. I spent 30 years building walls around intellectual property, fighting for market dominance. Now I spend my time tearing down barriers to healthcare access. You showed me there's more than one way to create value." Later, Marcus found his mother in the garden looking at the stars. "Ba would have loved this," he said, using the Chinese word for father. "He would have pretended it was no big deal," she replied, then bragged to everyone at the community center. She touched the medal hanging around his neck. "You know what he told me once. He said America was a place where barriers could become bridges, but only if someone was brave enough to build them. I'm just following the blueprint he left. No, my son, you're drawing new ones." As the evening wound down, Sarah pulled Marcus aside. "Board meeting tomorrow. We need to discuss the expansion into mental health diagnostics. Also, the White House called again about that advisory position." "All work and no celebration?" says the man who scheduled product reviews for the day after receiving the national medal. He laughed. She was right. The work never stopped, nor did he want it to. Each breakthrough revealed new possibilities. Each success highlighted remaining inequities. Back at his hotel, Marcus stood at the window, medal still around his neck, reflecting on the path that had led here. From a moment of confrontation in a TV studio to reshaping an industry, from fighting for recognition to being recognized at the highest levels, from building algorithms to building movements. His phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Okafor in Nigeria. Watching the ceremony live with my team in Lagos. Your medal is our medal. The work continues here too. Another from Raj in Mumbai. Presenting our pediatric AI variant at Delhi Medical Conference tomorrow, standing on the shoulders of giants. And one from Robert Sullivan, the cancer survivor who'd organized that first wave of patient advocacy. Grandson born today, healthy and perfect. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been here to meet him. Thank you for giving me time. These messages, more than any award, captured what mattered. Technology in service of humanity. Innovation guided by equity. Progress measured in lives touched rather than merely profits earned. Marcus removed the medal, placing it carefully in its case. Tomorrow it would go on the office wall, joining patents, awards, and most importantly, those patient letters that reminded everyone why they did this work. His laptop chimed with a video call from the Shanghai team, ready to discuss the Asian market expansion. The sun was rising there, a new day beginning. Marcus smiled and answered the call. Different time zone, same mission. As he dove into technical discussions about algorithm optimization for Asian genetic markers, Marcus thought about the layers of this moment. Here he was, a Black American entrepreneur with Taiwanese roots, leading a global team in developing technology that transcended borders, races, and economic barriers. The boy who'd watched his immigrant parents navigate a world that underestimated them had grown into a man who refused to let that world limit anyone else. The programmer who'd written code to detect cancer had discovered that the most important systems to debug were social ones. After the call, Marcus drafted a memo to the team. Today's recognition belongs to all of us, but medals and ceremonies are milestones, not destinations. Tomorrow, we continue our work with the same purpose that guided us from the beginning, to ensure that technological progress serves human progress, that innovation includes rather than excludes, that the future we build has room for everyone. The challenges ahead are significant. Mental health diagnostics, global health inequities, the next generation of AI ethics. But we face them with tools our predecessors could only dream of. Not just algorithms and data, but a community committed to change, a movement that transcends any single company or technology. 3 years ago, a moment of truth in a TV studio sparked something larger than any of us anticipated. That spark became a flame, and that flame lit others. Now we tend 1,000 fires of innovation, inclusion, and impact. The work continues, the dream expands, and the future, one where technology amplifies our humanity rather than replacing it, draws closer with each line of code, each life saved, each barrier broken. See you in the office tomorrow. We have lives to save. Marcus hit send and closed his laptop. Through his window, the Washington Monument stood illuminated against the night sky, a beacon pointing upward. Progress was never finished, only furthered. Change was never complete, only continued. Somewhere tonight, a young innovator was coding their first algorithm. A medical student was choosing to specialize in AI diagnostics. An entrepreneur was deciding to prioritize impact over quick profits. The ripples from that single moment of truth in Sterling Studio continued to spread, touching lives in ways impossible to fully measure. Marcus Chen had set out to build technology that could see what human eyes might miss. Along the way, he'd helped others see what bias had hidden, the full potential of human capability when barriers fell and opportunities opened. The future was being written by those brave enough to challenge not just what was possible, but who got to define possibility itself. And Marcus Chen, medal recipient and movement builder, was ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Because the work, the real work of building a more equitable world through innovation, never ended. It simply evolved, expanded, and inspired others to join the journey. And that was exactly how it should be.